Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. Oh, the intrigue that's going on with the Bengals at the moment. The Reds have become a walking disaster, and we've got the start of college football season all ahead of us, Rick.
Yeah, Skinny, this is going to serve as our Bengals NFL season preview show. Next week, we'll be more into like the individual matchup with the Patriots. We'll give you our pick for that. Today, we will have our college football picks, obviously, for week one, but we'll start with the Bengals. And before we actually get into the season breakdown or preview or what have you, we've got to talk some more about Ja'Marr Chase, of course. He was back until he wasn't anymore a day later. The Bengals wide receiver practiced early in the week, but then was back to sitting out on Wednesday. He strolled in about 15 minutes late wearing street clothes to practice, and that was just a day after Zach Taylor had said he was going to continue to practice and play in week one. So at this point, Skinny, where are we at with Ja'Marr Chase?
For starters, I think way too much was made of him practicing on Sunday and Monday. Those two practices were closed to the media. We don't know what he did. Somebody from the team gave information to an NFL.com reporter, Tom Pelissero, who tweeted out that he's practicing. There was a picture of him catching a pass in uniform and helmet. That might have been the only thing he did for all I know. I'm going to guess it was a little more than that, but it wasn't really a practice either. Everybody took this and ran with like, he's back. Those two weren't practices. You know why they weren't really practices, Rick? Because cut down day was coming Tuesday, and you weren't going to afford a guy that you're going to cut to get hurt in one of those two practices. They were basically walkthroughs. And what I understand is Ja'Marr did participate in those. He wants to, if things go according to Hoyle and he gets the contract extension, at least not fall too far behind. So those were good 2 days to do that. But it wasn't like he was back, with people covering him and running routes against physical contact. So everybody took that way too far. Now, I think Zach, though, thought, all right, he's back. He's going to practice. And he even admitted then yesterday, put his foot in his mouth and probably spoke too soon. So I think what happened, unfortunately, for Zach yesterday with Ja'Marr doing what he did is it really did make Zach Taylor look like a fool. And that's unfortunate because Zach has really had his back the whole entire process as much as he can have it.
Yeah, we finally hit the guys, what do you want from me portion of the program with Zach Taylor. When he said basically it was just like every day's a new day, right? I mean, to me, that was just him throwing his hands up going, guys, what do you want me to do at this point? Like, right. You knew what I knew. He was back. I thought he was going to be practicing all week. He's not anymore. He's doing his own thing. Obviously, this is not what I want, but what am I going to do? He's one of our best players. My question is, should someone else speak up to take the heat off of Zach Taylor? I've heard that from some people saying, like, where's the front office? Why aren't they saying anything? Skinny, what's your take on that? Should someone else be speaking out here?
I mean, you don't have a general manager. There's the problem. I mean, Duke Tobin is director of player personnel, and his role is, trying to get players on the club and trying to evaluate talent. He's not a contract negotiator. The Brown family never is going to talk in these circumstances, so you're not going to get them. So you don't have that buffer, and that is where Zach takes the bullet. There's been times over the years where there's been a roster move or something or a question that will come up that should be asked of a general manager, and he will literally answer it with, that's a question for Duke. And we've told him, listen, we don't get to talk to Duke but a couple times a year. And maybe in this circumstance, there does need to be a buffer, Rick. And I don't know what the answer is because they just don't have that person on staff.
And I also realize that to some extent, there may be like the Bengals front office doesn't want to be talking right now. That's part of the negotiation that's going on. It's better if they don't say anything maybe, but it does feel like Zach Taylor is in a really difficult position right now.
He is.
And I think he handles these situations really well. Like, I think he's done as well as he could really do, playing both sides of it, not really upsetting anyone while also being fairly reasonable with the fan base and the media, trying to give you guys legitimate answers to your questions that are just coming day after day, the same questions. He knows what he's going to get asked. It's exasperating, but he does a good job of handling those situations. One thing that stuck out to me was when he was asked if he and Ja'Marr are talking every day, he said, I'll keep that between me and Ja'Marr. Is that, should we read into that? Or is that just like, I'm not going to put any of our conversations out there, period?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter, but I would have thought that he talked to Ja'Marr on Sunday and Monday and had a feel for where the direction was heading, in my opinion. I mean, I don't think he would have said to us what he said on Tuesday And then I asked him point blank on Tuesday, will he play in the regular season opener? Yes. Yesterday, I literally asked him the same exact question, and I got a Kamala Harris word salad. I mean, it was truly a non-answer answers. We're still working the plan, and this is the latter portion of the plan. Well, what does that even mean? I don't even know what that means. But that wasn't as definitive as the yes of yesterday, was it?
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, like you said, you want to believe, oh, he's just having his guys back. He's like, I'm not going to put our conversations out there. But when you have a clear miscommunication like he had, or even worse, a situation where if they were communicating and Jamar Chase just completely threw Zach under the bus and lied to him saying, yeah, I'm going to be practicing, I'm going to play week 1, and then went back to not practicing and holding in, then man, that's tough. That would definitely suggest there's some type of, I don't know if issue is the right term, but there's definitely a level of you're over here and I'm over here doing my business to this relationship between Jamar Chase and Zach Taylor. And I mean, that definitely stuck out to me when he said that. Now, there is the possibility, I guess, that Jamar just doesn't practice at all. And then when they get out there to play the Patriots, he's in uniform playing. Zach Taylor did say he doesn't need to practice to play and be ready to go week 1. Do you believe that's a possibility, or where are you at with this right now?
I believe it's a possibility, and I've said it half jokingly that he could roll in at 5 till 1 on that Sunday. Maybe that's the time he signs a contract and rolls out and balls out. Yeah, I don't think he needs it would be nice. I think it would be helpful, but I don't think he needs it. But I also don't think
Taylor or Joe Burrow care if he practices 1 second before that game kicks off.
Correct. No, right. Care. I think they care that he plays in that game. And that's, again, I've talked this for a month now, Rick, and I'm going to stick to my guns. I don't think he plays without a deal. I just don't.
Schefter said that he felt it was a good faith gesture for Jamar to show up on Sunday and Monday and be quote unquote back at practice. Maybe that's the case, but did it do more harm than good now for him to show up for those couple of days, or do you think this is leading us down the right path?
No, I think it was the good faith gesture of, listen, the media is not going to be there to see me do it. I do want to get some reps in just in case the contract does get done. I want to show some good faith, and I think that was part of it. But I think the problem was everybody took this as like it was some formal practice. It really wasn't. And I keep wanting to reiterate that. I literally told people on the beat Sunday when that story broke nationally, I said, I'm still not convinced he practices Wednesday. And they're like, oh, come on. I said, I'm just telling you, I don't think this is a big deal because it's just him doing individual stuff, doing some walkthrough stuff. He did some of that stuff back in mini camp. And it's just basically a time where he doesn't want to make sure he doesn't fall all the way behind. And so that's a great time to do it. Out of sight, out of mind. We don't see it. We don't blow it into a big deal. It did get blown into a big deal because somebody from the Bengals, I don't know who that was, leaked it to Tom Pelissero, who puts it out there. Then we all come chasing our tails on it. But when I talked to a handful of folks, I said, guys, I'm not convinced. I'm just not convinced he's practicing on Wednesday. And lo and behold, we walked in, I said, looked around for a minute. We were all kind of quiet because I think we're all looking for the same thing. I said, I don't want to be that guy, but I don't see him. And they're like, oh, come on. I said, I don't see him. I'm just telling you. I said, I'm an old man with old eyes. You guys take a look where the receivers are. And like kind of one by one, he's like, oh, no, oh, no, oh, no, oh, no. Well, then the great drama of all, Rick, because they practice at the indoor facility, right? And the team buses the players down from the stadium. And 2 buses came, and all the players were there, and he wasn't on those buses, obviously. Well, then the 3rd bus came. And then the mystery was, oh, I bet she's on the 3rd bus. I wasn't on the 3rd bus either. And then all of a sudden, as the video we've seen on Twitter that Kelsey Conway took and some others took, he saunters into practice about 15 minutes into it. And I thought that almost looked like an FU walk if there ever was one.
That's what I was thinking watching. And again, that's like, okay, I'm reading too much into this, whatever. But seeing that video of him sauntering into practice.
I literally used that word. I said, look, that is an absolute saunter if there was ever a saunter.
It was an FU attitude about it. The way it was like, yeah, I'm showing up 15 minutes late just because I can. And this is what I'm doing right now. And it's like, man, after you just had those back-to-back days where you showed up, if it was a show of good faith by showing up on Sunday and Monday, then don't you think you're on time, attentive, and acting like you want to be a part of the team, even if you're not going to participate on Wednesday?
Yeah.
Unless Zach Taylor was going to tell us after practice, yeah, actually, he's a little nicked up or he's getting some treatment or it's fine. It was cleared with us. We know what he's doing. That's fine. That wasn't the case. Zach Taylor was caught off guard by the fact that Jamar Chase was not there on Wednesday, by the fact that he showed up late on Wednesday. And to me, that was like the first time where this really felt like, all right, Jamar's kind of being an asshole about this. And like, he's starting to push this a little bit more into me type territory at this point.
I mean, I think he feels like that's the only way to get this contract done. And maybe it does. Maybe they still get it done. I don't see them doing it right now. And it's hard to always get both sides, right? You always want to have the hot take of one side or the other. I understand his point. I do.
Yeah.
You're making $1 million. You want the knowledge that, hey, I'm guaranteed money even if I get hurt. But the Bengals side is one too of this is why you have rookie contracts in the NFL. You let players play on those rookie contracts. It allows you then to roster build around that. It's usually the quarterback you're hoping is on the rookie deal. And that was Joe Burrow for a handful of years. And at the same point in time, I've said this a lot, and I'll say it a lot here. I don't know why the wide receiver market keeps getting reset. And I'm at the stage of, I just don't know if I do it. I especially not now. Because here's the other thing. If you're the Bengals, let's just throw out Justin Jefferson. Let's work off of his monies, right? $110 million guaranteed, $140 million is what he can make. Let's work off those monies. Let's just say the Bengals cave and they pay it. And Jamar Chase, and I don't want this to happen, Jamar Chase suffers a catastrophic injury in week 5 and never is the same. They're on the hook for all that money. When this year, all they're on the hook for is $1 million in base salary. And so I understand their point too. Fans may not like to hear that. I know, if you're a fanboy, you certainly don't want to hear it. Just pay the man. Well, it's just not that easy, folks.
Yeah, that seems to be the big piece of this puzzle that everyone is missing when they talk about it. Like, the fact of the guaranteed money is it's guaranteed. If something happens to him, you're out that money now. Whereas right now, you still got technically 2 years before you'd be having to give him those types of dollars. So I completely get both sides of it. And to this point, I thought both sides had really done a good job of playing their business side out, but also keeping it amicable, being respectful, making both sides look good. And like Jamar showing up, looking like he was invested in this, I thought he was doing a pretty good job of being like, yeah, I want my contract, but I'm also a part of the team and I'm really focused on winning. All of a sudden, things changed on Wednesday when he showed up to practice late like that and he made Zach Taylor look like a fool. I'm not saying that's not within his right, but things are different now. And now as a Bengals fan, I think there is much more cause for concern all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I mean, we're doing this on a Thursday morning. In fact, when I'm done with this podcast, I'm driving straight to Paycor, and they practice probably about 45 minutes after we finish this podcast, get wrapped up. They practice at 1:30 I'm assuming at the indoor facility again today because of the heat. I mean, he might be dressed for practice today for all I know. I mean, to the point of Zach Taylor, for all we know. But again, if this contract doesn't get done, and I'm of the belief it doesn't, it's just my opinion. It could, but I don't believe it does. Then what is he going to do? And I think that's the answer to this. And if it's that he caves and plays, well, I know that's great. That's all well and good. But I go back to what did this all do other than piss everybody off in the end?
Yep. All right, let's switch gears here, kind of preview this season a bit. We'll go through the schedule in a second, but I got a couple questions. We've broken down the position groups. We've talked about a lot of different guys. We've talked about the battles and everything. So we're not going to go through all of that again, but just a couple of quick questions I had for you. One, give me a potential breakout player for this season, a guy to watch that's not already on the radar, that's like going to be a fun name early in the season to keep an eye on.
It's a name you already know, and he's going to get touches, and we already knew that, but I just think Chase Brown has a chance to have a great year. I just think with his playmaking ability, and if teams opt to play the Bengals the way they have in the last few years, which is light boxes, getting him some touches in the pass game, in the screen game. Felt like I saw a ton more screen game in training camp than I've seen in a long time. And I think they want to get his hands on the ball as much as possible. I think it's Chase Brown for me. I think he has a chance to be really, really, really good.
I love that answer. And I knew you weren't going to pick this guy, but another guy I wanted to ask you about again, because we talked about him after the first game. We were kind of like, well, okay, great. You got a couple balls at the end there, but like, what have you really done to this point? Jermaine Burton ended up being the highest graded offensive rookie in all of preseason by Pro Football Focus. His score was 86.1, if that does anything for you. And we've talked about how much legitimacy to put into Pro Football Focus, especially in preseason games. But he did end up continuing to do a little bit more as the preseason went on, even after that first game. You saw him at training camp as well. I still believe he's probably a little bit behind some of those other guys for that third receiver spot, but has he done enough to show you that there's some potential there and you think he could make an impact at some point this season?
Yeah, I think that, but he needs to get the trust of one Joe Burrow. I mean, when Joe Burrow calls you out after a preseason game that you need to get in your playbook more, I think that's very telling. The fact that he got, to your point, late snaps in that first preseason game, and then was one of those players. I mean, the third preseason game is usually for a handful of guys trying to make the roster, and then a bunch of guys who aren't going to make the roster. He got thrown out there with those guys too. But I do think you saw the playmaking ability without question. I think that's the nice thing that you saw is the one thing that the dude can do is he can run. And for him now, it's the nuances of playing receiver at the professional level and being a professional, and maybe the nudging of a Joe Burrow is enough to get him going. But boy, you don't get on the field a lot of times if you don't gain that dude's trust.
We've talked about all the positives, all the reasons to be excited about this team. Give me your biggest concern going into the season.
I mean, I would go offensive line depth, and that's probably true for 20, 25 teams in this league, maybe even more, maybe all of them.
What's a bigger concern, offensive line depth or defensive line depth?
No, I'm going to go offensive line. I still think the defensive line has enough, and they're going to get pieces back within a month. Miles Murphy will be off IR. McKinley Jackson just went on IR today, and I would assume he comes off in 4 weeks as well. So I do think that the defensive line depth will be fine. I mean, obviously they had to go out and sign an edge guy just to have an extra body in KJ Henry. But listen, this offensive line last year, Rick, stayed pretty damn healthy, right? I mean, they were a really healthy group, and that just doesn't happen every year in the NFL. It just doesn't. So if Ted Karras gets hurt, listen, I know Matt Lee was the darling of camp, and good for him for making the roster as a 7th-round pick rookie, but that's who you're going to entrust your offensive line to if Ted Karras gets hurt. The guard depth. I mean, is Cody Ford able to still play in there? We've already seen Amarius Mims get hurt, and I don't think Trent Brown's going to get through the opener and play 100 snaps. I just don't think his body's going to allow him to do that. So somebody's going to have to probably play some snaps there if it's not Amarius Mims. And again, that's probably true of a lot of teams, but just coming off a year where they were healthy up front, it's just, I mean, the law of averages catches up to you.
Yeah, you almost just feel like from a luck standpoint, if nothing else, you
Right.
were lucky last year in that regard. Chances are this year it's not going to be that way. So that definitely is a concern. All right. The Bengals win total for this upcoming season is 10.5. Once again, same as last year. We know what the schedule is. Do you need me to put it up on the screen here? Do you want me to throw it up?
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt for the graphic. I got it in my head because I've gone through it about 1 billion times in my head.
All right, here. Let's share the screen and we will go through these games here. All right, starting with the Patriots week 1, obviously. We said 10.5 was the win total. Skinny, I think the way to look at this, we always kind of do, is there are games you feel really good about them winning. Games you don't feel very good about them winning. You think they're going to lose. And then you've got your toss-up games is the way you usually put it. Obviously, the Patriots, I would assume, fall into that likely win category. How do you see the rest of this kind of going from there?
Yeah, that's the first month that I'm looking at right now. So let's go with the likely win, likely loss, and then the toss-up category. And I'll tell you why I put a game in a toss-up category. Game 1 is a likely win. Game 2 is a likely loss. Game 3 is a likely win. Game 4 is a likely win, even though it's on the road. Game 5 is a toss-up. You know why it's a toss-up? It's at home. That helps you, but the Ravens swept you last year, right? So we're 3-1-1. I'm going to put the last number I give you is the toss-up category.
Yeah, and to be clear, there's where because not everyone's seeing this. It's the Patriots, the Chiefs is a loss, the Commanders is a win, the Panthers is a win, and now the Ravens is a toss-up at home.
I'm going to put the Giants as a toss-up just because it's on the road. So we're now 3-1-2. We go from there to the Browns on the road. I'm going to put that in the likely loss category. So that gets us to 3-2-2. The Eagles game at home is a toss-up, in my opinion. So we're at 3-2-3. The Raiders game's a win. We're at 4-2-3. The Ravens on the road, I'm putting in the likely loss category. So we're at 4-3-3. The Chargers on the road is a toss-up. So we're 4-3-4. The Steelers at home, I'm going to put in the win category because I just don't think Pittsburgh's going to be very good. So I'm going to go to 5-3-4. Cowboys on the road is a toss-up, 5-3-5. Titans on the road is a toss-up because it's on the road, 5-3-6. Browns at home, I'm going to put that in the win category because it is at home, and they beat them last year. I know it was in that wonky last game that didn't matter. So we're at, 6-3-5, right? No, 6-3-6 actually at the moment. Then the Broncos at home is a win. That's 7-3-6. And the Steelers on the road, I'll put in the toss-up category 7-3-7. So if you can basically split the toss-up category, maybe win one more than you lose, that gets you to 11 wins. I'm going to go 11-6.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are 7 teams in the NFL this year with an expected win total under 7 games, according to Vegas odds. The Bengals play all 7 of them. That's the Giants, Raiders, Commanders, Titans, Panthers, Broncos, and the Patriots, the first game of the season. What's the number they have to go in those games? Is it 6-1,
6-1?
5-2?
Yeah, and I always say this too when I write this, because I'm writing my prediction piece next week that'll include some of this stuff in it, Rick. Every year that I've done this exercise where I try to predict the record, put the likely wins, likely losses, toss-up games, every year a game in the likely win category turns into a loss. Remember when they played the Jets a couple of years ago and Mike White had the game of his life? And every year there's a game I put in the likely loss category that turns into a win. So those always balance themselves out. So to your point, yeah, out of the 7 games that probably 6-1 is what they should go and probably will go.
Yeah. So you go 6-1, then it puts you in a position basically where you got to play 500 ball in the other 10 games.
Yep.
And if this team is a Super Bowl contender, like we've talked about,
and they will,
obviously a season is weird. It can be like a few years ago where they start slow and they lose a few games where they shouldn't, and then they catch fire and they play great football at the end of the year and they still make the playoffs. But if you're a team that is theoretically a real contender for the Super Bowl in a given year, you got to play 500 ball in those 10 games. I mean, yes, there are some very difficult games in there when you talk about the Chiefs, the Eagles, but there are also some winnable ones in there. Like, I think at Dallas is a very winnable game, even though it's on the road. So you beat the Chargers and maybe the Cowboys, split the AFC North games, you're at 5-5.
Right. And there you go. Yeah. You're to 11 wins without almost batting an eye.
Yeah, with Joe Burrow in there, I know like sometimes when you look at this and you're like the NFL, you go game by game, it's hard to pick a team to win 11 or 12 games. But we've seen the Bengals with Joe Burrow healthy. That's what they do. I mean, they go on long stretches where they just win a bunch of games in a row.
And let's go back to last season. I mean, even with the Joe Burrow injury issues at different points of the season and missing games at the end and all of those things and giving up so many big plays on defense, playing a first place schedule, they still went 9-8. Even through all of that, they still went 9-8. Yeah. So I'm asking for a 2-game improvement against the last place schedule, basically. Yeah, I think 11 wins, I'm probably short shrifting them a win. I mean, I could be easily convinced this team goes 12-5, 13-4 is probably a stretch just because of, who they do play and the fact of how tough
the fact that they're
North
AFC
is.
North.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of the AFC North, what are your predictions for the division?
I think the Bengals win it. I think Baltimore, a new defensive coordinator, some new bodies on defense. I know the Derrick Henry edition, everybody's geeked by, and they probably should be. But I'll say they're a playoff team. I'll say Cleveland knocks on the door of the playoffs again and might be a second wild card team. And I think Pittsburgh, for the first time in Mike Tomlin's era, finally finishes under 500.
Yeah, that'd be great to see. I'm always amazed at what he does because
I feel
like his roster has not been good for
but this feels,
years now.
I mean, this whole quarterback situation just feels like it's an implosion ready to happen.
I hope so. I'd love to see it be that way. Super Bowl prediction, Skinny, you got one for us? Who do you think's gonna make it?
Yeah, there's some turmoil with the 49ers right now, right? With Trent Williams holding out and Brandon Ayuk's contract issue. But man, that roster's so damn good. And the team that everybody's going to be chic on, obviously, is Detroit. And understandably so. I think they're a really good team and they did some good things in the offseason. Philly's either going to tank badly because of their internal strife or their roster's so good they could compete. But I'm going San Francisco over Kansas City. I mean, it just feels like those are the two teams, and it's usually different, right? But it feels like that's the case. I will say this. I would probably be more bullish on picking the Bengals to go to the Super Bowl again, at least if they can get home field advantage. I know what they did a couple of years ago, going to Kansas City and all that, but I think that's the big part for this year is, can you get home field advantage? And I think you have a chance to do that.
After last year, I want nothing to do with picking the Bengals to win the Super Bowl, and I want nothing to do with anyone else picking the Bengals to win the Super Bowl because that's all we heard this time of year last year, and obviously we saw where that went. I'm going Chiefs and Lions. I think the Chiefs beat the Lions. Like you said, Lions are a bit of a chic pick right now, but the NFC is just kind of ridiculous anyway, so they're as good as anyone, I guess. the Chiefs, until someone Skinny, they've been in 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls. They've won 3 of them.
And you know what's funny? I was doing some. I had one fantasy football draft. I'm getting ready to do another tonight, and I was just looking up some stuff. You didn't have I didn't realize I didn't realize he didn't have as good a year last year as I thought, because he's arguably the best quarterback in football. Go look at Pat Mahomes' numbers last year. They weren't great. And you look back at some of their run, they won with defense. So to your point, they find different ways to win. It's not just Pat Mahomes slinging 45 touchdown passes.
Well, and that go back to the Bengals, the year that they went to the Super Bowl. Everyone talks about Joe Burrow and thinks back to like, oh, the Bengals were so magical when Joe Burrow was healthy. But that run was not Joe Burrow throwing the ball all over the place and the Bengals put up 40 points. He had some incredible moments during that run. And that's the same thing Pat Mahomes does. When the game is on the line, when you need that fourth quarter comeback, those guys step up and they make those incredible plays. That's why I'm not picking against Pat Mahomes until he. No,
I'm with you. And again, they don't need Pat Mahomes to do what he's done in years past and throw you 45 TDs. He threw 27 last year, and they still won a Super Bowl. And they won it because he's still, you're right, to your point, when you need him to make a big play, makes a big play, and they've added weapons to him too. That doesn't hurt either. I mean, he did it last year with as pedestrian a group of wide receivers as you could possibly have, which is maybe another reason why you don't have to pay wide receivers top dollar.
I mentioned that I didn't want anything to do with picking the Bengals to win the Super Bowl, but let me just throw this out there to you real quick. Yes. Bengals odds to win the Super Bowl right now at FanDuel,
12-1.
15-1.
I like that. That's a good price. That's a good value.
Skinny, regardless of how you look at the NFL this year, even if you have a very pessimistic view of the Bengals, they're top 5, top 6 contenders?
Yeah. 30 to win $450. That's worth a $30 play, right?
I feel like 15-1 is pretty good odds for a team that has,
I'm with you,
by almost anyone's estimations, a fairly real chance at competing in the AFC.
No, right. I'm with you.
15-1. That's rarely am I enticed by Super Bowl odds, but 15-1 for the Bengals feels pretty good if you want to put a flyer on that. Any other thoughts here on the NFL at large, where the Bengals obviously we'll talk again next week before they play their first game, but
yeah, no, it's almost upon us. That's all. I'm just glad the training camp portion of my life is over. Now I just have another week to deal with Jamar Chase.
Can I just say though, like I hear the media types doing the whole like, oh, Jamar Chase, wake me up when this is over. This is so old. Like I love Mo's show. He does a great show, but I heard him yesterday complain about that for like 2 segments of having to do the Jamar Chase thing. What else would you guys be doing right now?
Exactly.
This is a gift from the football media god.
I agree with
Otherwise,
that.
you'd be talking about nothing during training camp. Instead, you're talking about something that's very real and very interesting to every fan. Why would you not be like, thank you, Jamar Chase?
No, I don't disagree with that on your point. I just talk about just training camp in general. It's just,
no doubt. And by the way, I get asking the same questions every day, like as a beat writer, is old. And talking about the same thing as a guy who does a radio show like Mo is old. I get that. But at the same time, remember, it's training camp. There's nothing interesting to talk about.
I think there were a lot of people that honestly thought this was over on Tuesday when Zach Taylor said what he said. And I even stuck to my guns that day. I'm like, I'll believe it when I see him there tomorrow, guys. I'll believe it then. And sure enough, my man wasn't there. Or he was there, but he wasn't there practicing.
Yep. All right, let's switch gears to the Reds. They are 1-5 since we last talked. They're 63-70 overall, 4th place in the NL Central, 13.5 games back of the first place Brewers. They're now 10 games out of the last wild card spot, and that'll be the last time I go through all that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
done with that portion of the program. The Reds are going to promote pitching prospect Rhett Lowder and give him the start on Friday night against the Brewers. Lowder is the number 2 prospect in the organization and is 22 years old. He was drafted 7th overall last year after pitching for Wake Forest. He made his first and only start in AAA last Thursday and tossed 6 scoreless innings. There's been some hand-wringing about the Reds making this decision to bring Rhett Lowder up on Friday to make his debut already. Skinny, where do you fall on that? Are you good with the Reds doing this?
I am, but that was not the plan at all. This wasn't Rhett Lowder pitching his way to the point where, hey, let's bring it. This was literally out of necessity. They've run out of arms, man. You've seen the last 2 nights, 2 bullpen nights, for goodness sakes. They're out of dudes. And so
you could throw someone else out there, right?
Not really. I mean, honest to goodness, not really. Because their plan was to let him start in Louisville for the rest of this season. That's the perfect way to end. Let him end on a high note and then go into spring training, let him compete for a rotation spot. Maybe he starts in Louisville again, and then he's maybe the first call up when an injury or ineffectiveness happens to one of the starting pitchers. But this was not the plan. So deviating from the plan is a little troublesome, but at the same time, like I said, they're just out of dudes.
Yeah. I guess my question, and I'm not sure how you feel about this, I don't really think if you're a guy who can't handle going up to the major leagues, struggling, going back down, and then coming back up later and succeeding, like you're just probably not a guy, right? Like you're not a real dude that's going to succeed at the highest level of the sport.
And listen, he struggled for a bit at Chattanooga this year and pulled himself up by his bootstraps. So I don't think he's that type of guy whatsoever.
Right. So when people start worrying about like, oh, you're rushing him and he's going to be ruined by this, like I don't necessarily buy into that. But to your point, that was when I also don't love a front office being like, we have a calculated plan for one of our top prospects in place. And just because your season has gone down the tubes, no one cares about what's going on at the major league level. And you can't even keep an actual major league pitching rotation together. Now you're throwing him into the fire. Like, I don't love that either.
No, the way this season is unraveled, as optimistic as I was at the start of the year, and maybe too much so, not believing in too many guys having sophomore slumps and not realizing the injury bug was going to get them the way it did and all that thing. I mean, here's my problem right now moving forward. Yeah, I love Hunter Green. I love Nick Lodolo when he's right. I like Andrew Abbott quite a lot. I do. I like all three of those guys, and I do think they're the core of a rotation moving forward. I like TJ Friedel a lot. I like some of these parts a lot. But when Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and Andrew Abbott can get through a full season, pitching a full season, wake me up, because I don't know if it's ever going to happen. And then you look at guys like Friedel who, can't stay healthy and is actually playing a little bit nicked up right now at the moment. And good God, Matt McClain, is he ever going to, is that dude ever going to be right again? Are we just going to keep testing him for different maladies?
Which is terrible because he was the one guy we were certain was going to be good. He was going to be solid. He'd be fine. And now we're doing that game with him.
Yeah. And so, do you trust this front office to go out and add free agent pieces? Do they think that, no, it's just a matter of getting our guys healthy again? But hey, even if next year, again, I love Hunter. Hunter Green became Cy Young material this year, but again, he can't finish the season. And I know that's a lot of major league pitching today, but it's damn problematic.
And my other issue is, now I know this season they've really almost never had everyone healthy, but even when they've had at least most of these guys healthy, it still hasn't been good enough to compete for anything, by the way.
Right.
Like, it still hasn't been good enough with those guys all healthy. Now they're like, maybe one day all of them will be healthy at the same time. Okay, and then what? Like, I've lost all faith, and I've said this a few times, so I won't go through it, but I've lost all faith and optimism for the future of this team because I just don't know that they're good enough, even if they are healthy.
Yeah.
And getting them all healthy at this point is a lost cause, it feels like.
And then adding the pieces to it, the couple of pieces that you need to add. Do you trust the front office to go do that?
Well, no. And, this is another great point that Mo Egger made earlier this week is that their argument this offseason is going to be like, well, getting these injured guys back are almost like free agent acquisitions.
Right.
Those are acquisitions for the offseason. We got all these guys healthy.
Yep. I'm with you. I think that's what we're going to hear.
Yep. I have nothing else to add on the Reds at this point. Do you?
No. I will say I went to the game on, what night was that? Tuesday night. I went to the game on Tuesday night after I wrote my cut down story. And it was sparsely attended, obviously, but I've never seen a crowd that was that sparse boo so loud when Spencer Steer was held up at third, and then when that game ended.
All 4,000 in attendance were really letting them have it.
They were letting them have it for sure.
All right, real quick, college football. We'll get to our pick 'em in a second, but I got a couple comments here from an Ohio State standpoint. Urban Meyer made a few comments this week about the Buckeyes. One on quarterback Will Howard, and then one on Ohio State's schedule that I wanted to get your thoughts on. Will Howard is currently 5th in Heisman Trophy betting odds at plus 1,400. But Urban went out and said he doesn't think Howard will be a finalist for the award, which ruffled some feathers in the Ohio State fan base. Quote, "They have 2 first-rounders at running back. They have an incredible group of receivers. I'm just not sure. I think he's a great player, and he's going to run one of the top offenses in the country. But when you get to November, you have to have the stats. I'm not hating on him. I'm just afraid he won't have the stats. I just don't see him having that 40 touchdown passing season. I think he'll be a pretty good runner for Ohio State, but not enough statistically to put him in the Heisman." Skinny, do you have any issue with Urban Meyer talking that way about a current Ohio State quarterback?
Hey, I just, people get so angry at others' opinions. I mean, it's his opinion, right? And it's a pretty informed opinion as a former coach. And my opinion of his opinion is I don't think he's wrong. I think that's probably right. I talked glowingly about Will Howard last week, right? When we talked about college football. And I think it's a great addition for Ohio State. And he's going to do good things for them. But to that point, I just don't think he does quite enough to be in that Heisman conversation. Maybe he does, and if he does, people are going to scream at Urban Meyer's an idiot. The same people who loved on him for all those years when he was the head coach now think he's a dope. Urban Meyer's a lot of things. He's not a dope.
I think this is Ohio State fans being way oversensitive just because it's Urban Meyer saying it. It's like if anyone else says this, they're probably like, yeah, our strength is going to be running the football this year. Our quarterback probably is going to have to put up crazy numbers through the air. That's our path to success. And yet they're getting mad because it's Urban Meyer saying that. I clicked on the headline of the story and I expected it to be like Urban Meyer taking pot shots, sounding like some old bitter hater who's out of the game. And I read this, I'm like, well, no, that's a very reasoned, well thought out analysis of the season ahead for Ohio State. It doesn't sound like he's taking shots at Will Howard really at all to me. And the other thing was he talked about Ohio State's schedule. He said, I worry about the schedule. If you look closely at it, there's 5 weeks until they play a game. They start with 3 games where they'll be 50-point favorites. Then they have a bye week. And then Michigan State in week 5 is a shell of themselves. They're going to pull the starters in the 3rd or 4th quarter. I'm worried about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm worried about that. I'd almost rather say let's go into that Oregon game as fresh as possible. That's what I would want. Listen, maybe you don't think they're going to be tuned up, but I'd want my guys to be as fresh as can be for that game. Wouldn't you?
I mean, in theory, that sounds good, but I will give some credence to a guy who's been there before and been there with this program and been like, hey, I'd rather be tested a little bit earlier in the season. All those cakewalks and not playing your starters full games and not having their conditioning level up might be a concern if you're a head coach of a football program. That seems like a reasonable concern coming from a guy who coached college football. I don't think this is crazy. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I don't think it's like a crazy thing to say.
Here's the thing. Do you want to have one of those tough games right before the Oregon game? I don't think I want that.
No, but I might want a game. The one thing about this is they are like games where the actual spread is like 48.5 points on Saturday.
Well, it's 50 or was 50 at one point.
Yeah. You might want it to be more like, a FBS team that you're going to only beat by 4 or 5 touchdowns in theory, instead of like 7 or 8 touchdowns. I don't know if that helps you, but maybe it does something to get you more ready for Oregon.
Well, here, let me look. And since you said that, I want to see who's Oregon got before they play Ohio State. Maybe they're in the same boat, right? I don't know that.
They've got Idaho, Boise State, Oregon State, UCLA, and Michigan State. So
it's tougher, but it's not like you're not like you're going to be totally battle tested. I mean, Boise's not the Boise we remember.
No, but it's better than
it's better. Yeah,
and then the game at UCLA is you're going on the road playing a high major team, and then you've got Michigan State at home, which obviously we talked about Michigan State stinking already for Ohio State, but I don't know. I don't think that's a huge deal personally.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't either.
All right, let's get into our pick'em. We'll start Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Towson at Cincinnati. The Bearcats are a 31.5-point favorite. The total is 53.5.
Well, I'm looking at 29.5 at the moment, but we'll use the line that you have of 31.5 because it's your line, and you're looking at. I know it's good. I'm good with it.
It might have changed. I did do this at 1 a.m. last night, so it could have changed 2 points. I guess
if it did, that's a pretty big 2-point switch. Is a pretty good one. I think much like last year, UC gets off to a rousing start, and there was false optimism over the Emory Jones era when that happened. But I think they name their score here, and I think they'll name it pretty solidly. I'll go UC 51, Towson 13. So UC and the over for me.
All right, UC and the over for you. I'm going to go UC 45, Towson 7. Ooh. UC and the under. I was looking at Towson and what they've done in recent years against other FBS teams. They played West Virginia in 2022 and West Virginia
last year
65-7, and then they beat Maryland last year 38. Or Maryland beat them 38-6 last year. So I don't know if there's much you can really take from those games other than they haven't scored many points at all. Saturday at 3:30, we've got Akron at Ohio State. Ohio State is a 48.5-point favorite. The total is 58.5. What do you got there, Skinny?
I'm going Ohio State 56-0.
Okay.
So Ohio State and the under.
OSU and the under. Total there was 58.5. You've got it 56-0.
Yep.
Ryan Day's average margin of victory against MAC teams. Guess.
38.6.
Try 59.7.
Wow.
59.7. I believe that's 4 games that it took that he's played against
Wow.
MAC teams.
That's crazy.
Average margin of victory, 59.7. So you see that spread of 48.5 seems ridiculously high.
It's come down.
Giving you some wiggle room.
It was 50.5 at one point. I did see that. So that's come down a little bit. So I guess some money's
come
coming on Akron. The smart money's coming on Akron.
Yeah, this is Chip Kelly's first game as offensive coordinator. I know Ohio State's going to run the football a lot this year, but I also think Chip Kelly's going to flex a little bit here in the opening week and put up 70 points on his own. So Ohio State 70, Akron 3 for me. OSU in the over. Saturday at 7:45, we've got Southern Miss at Kentucky. Kentucky is a 28-point favorite. The total is 49.5.
I mean, there are so many unknowns on that offense, but that defense, I think, is going to set them up all night long. You got 10 starters back on defense. You got a All-American up front. You got one of the top 100 players in the country, according to ESPN, in a cornerback position. You got my guy, J.J. Weaver, on the edge. I think that defense just dominates and actually helps out the offense in that regard. And I do think the offense, I mean, you got Berrien Brown. You got some playmakers still. And again, the unknown of Brock Vandegrift is there, but a highly regarded guy who transferred from Georgia. I'll go Kentucky 45, Southern Miss 10.
All right, so that is Kentucky and the over here.
Yeah, I think the defense sets them up with one short field and actually gets a score of their own in this game.
All right, I like Kentucky to cover the number as well. I'm going to go 38-6, though. I agree that Southern Miss just can't score at all. Maybe they get a couple field goals or a late touchdown, but 38-6, UK and the under for me. Skinny, do you have a favorite bet or a parlay for the week?
I do have a favorite bet. Hang on one second. I just closed out of that, but give me 2 seconds. And it's one of the big games of the weekend. I got to find it first.
This is a great week 1 slate, by the way.
It is. I love Georgia laying 13.5.
I do too.
Against Clemson.
So that's part of my bet here. I've got Clemson under 17.5 points against Georgia is my favorite.
Yeah, no, I think Georgia wins this thing 38-10ish. I think they win it comfortably, in my opinion.
So it was 13.5 is the spread. Is that what, right?
That's literally what I'm looking at. It could go up.
Georgia minus 13.5.
I would say if it went to 14.5, Rick, I'd probably buy the half a point and just get it to 14. I feel really comfortable at 14.
Yeah, I agree. I loved that number as soon as I saw it, but I dug even a little deeper. I just wanted to see, I was like, how many points do they think Clemson is going to score in this game? When I saw 17.5, to me, that feels like stealing money. I'm going Clemson under 17.5 points.
And this isn't for betting purposes, but I am so interested in the Colorado game tonight as we're doing this podcast. I mean, just from all the stuff that's been built up, from the transfers to the way Dion has handled some of his media stuff. And they're playing a legit FBS team. I mean, this isn't like the K. I think they're not. Are they 9.5 point favorite tonight?
I thought it was like 2 or 3, unless it got bet up big time. The opening line was tiny.
No, it's 9.5. They're a 9.5 point favorite over North Dakota State at home. I mean, either they're going to roll North Dakota State because it just is what it is. They're a great FBS program.
I don't know that they will, Skinny. That could be an interesting game.
Program. Yeah, I think it's going to be. Trust me. I've got a fantasy draft at 9, and I'm a little bummed by it because I'm trying to watch this game at the same time.
Yeah, there's a couple games on the slate even for tonight that are fun to watch. So I'm looking forward to that one. All right, let's get into Ask Skinny Anything.
Let's do it.
What is your typical game day TV setup for watching college or NFL on an off day?
I'll start with NFL. NFL for me is it's all red zone. I'll see what the 2 local games are because it's usually the only way I'm home on a Sunday is if the Bengals aren't playing. Yeah, correct. Or playing on a Monday night, whatever, or have just played on a Thursday night. So I get a handful of them this year. A handful of my Sundays, which is nice. Get one actually.
So where are we at? Are we like? Do you the basement?
No, at couch in the living room. Just couch in the living room, red zone, and that's probably all I watch. I will occasionally, if like one of the local TV games is on and I might have a little interest in it and it's getting down to the wire and they're cutting to a bunch of different games, I may just flip between red zone and that game. But for me on a Saturday, man, I am a zoo switching around games. I just flip like a crazy person. I try to lie. I swear every year I go, all right, I'm going to lock in on this game at 12 o'clock and I'm going to watch it until it gets boring. And then I can't do it. I just cannot do it. Now, like, I try to watch the locals when they're on. If UC's on, I'll try to lock into that. Ohio State, I'll lock into that as much as humanly possible for a bit. And certainly Kentucky, I'm not flipping the channel except for commercials. when they're playing. But yeah, I'm terrible at it. I just flip like a crazy man. And I literally sometimes will write down what channels all have games just to make sure I don't miss a channel. It's got like a random, like Ion or something's got a game. They might have an Ivy League game for all I know. I'll flip to.
Yeah, or like Spectrum Pacific has Hawaii on at 12:30 in the morning.
Correct.
Yeah.
What's your setup?
I can't do the flipping around. Like I've got to just do I got to watch multiple games. I can't only watch one game, but it's like I've just got to put them all in front of me. If I need like a phone and a tablet and a laptop or something to get there, like I'll do that. But I just need multiple screens. If I'm in my office, it's a pretty good setup. I've got 2 TVs on the wall. I've got 2 computer monitors here. I can do like 3 games and Twitter, and that's usually enough for me.
All right.
Yeah. If Skinny had to cover one college as the beat writer, which one would he choose?
Covering my alma mater was interesting because it was a chance to go back to Lexington on a regular basis, and I love the SEC. It's hard not to love the SEC. I'll go Kentucky just because it's my alma mater.
Do you like covering football or basketball better at the college level?
Probably football just in general just has a rhythm to it, right? It's just this day is this day is that, this day is this, and then you got the game and the aftermath after the game. College basketball can be a little bit of a grind. The grindy part of college basketball was, leaving for a city, getting in the city, covering the game, flying out the next day, and then maybe having to drive to Lexington the next day to cover a press conference because there's a game the next day of that. I mean, whatever. It does get you. I mean, it builds up.
I prefer like traveling back from Washington State on 3 different flights and then driving to Cintas Center for a noon tip off the next day.
Wow.
Can Skinny rank these greater Cincinnati-based pizza joints? Camparosa, Dewey's, La Rosa's, Bourbon House Pizza, Goodfellas, Adriatico's, and Sorrento's.
Those are all, and you sent me this question just for full disclosure, so I could do it. So I've had pizza at all of them. I have not had Sorrento's in honestly 20 years.
Where is Sorrento's? I've never had that.
It's in Norwood.
Okay.
Almost right off the lateral.
I feel like I should be more familiar with it then. It must be fairly close to Xavier.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna put that one like as a incomplete because I just haven't had it in 20 years. Okay. The other ones are hard because I like them all for different reasons.
It's an interesting list.
So I'm going to go from bottom up. And again, somebody's got to be in the bottom of this list. And I would tell you, for full disclosure, I've eaten all of these and I would eat all of them again. Dewey's is at the bottom for me. It just never is a go-to play. I enjoy it when I do go. It's like once a year probably because some friends want to go to it or whatever. And it's the place we want. And they're all right, we'll go to Dewey's. But that's kind of like, that would be the last on this list. Then La Rosa's. Again, I like La Rosa's. Here's the thing for me. I have a taste test of, what's this guy? The Barstool guy has the 1-bite taste test.
Yeah,
I call it the cold pizza taste test. If a cold pizza is good, if it's good cold, then that's a really good pizza. Unfortunately, La Rosa's is just not a good cold pizza to me. I like it when we bring it home and it's hot and you have whatever slices you have of that. And I'm like, yeah, but then it goes in the fridge. And I don't like to reheat pizza normally, but that is one that I literally have to reheat because it just doesn't taste right cold. Yeah, it's just weird.
It's kind of crisp. Yeah, it's not the same. But on that note, though, if you let the traditional crust pepperoni La Rosa's pizza sit out for like 3 or 4 hours and it just gets that like room temperature where the cheese is kind of like it's no longer melty and stuff, then it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But you're right. The second it goes in the fridge, it's done.
All right. Above that, I'm going to put Bourbon House with the caveat. I absolutely love Bourbon House. The damn thing is so big, though. And unfortunately, nobody in my house really liked it. They let me get it about once a year. And okay, Dad, you can have that. And we'll all have our slice. And I can't eat more than 2 slices of that. It's just so much. It's so good.
You've never had Bourbon House, it's like almost like Chicago style, but it's not even. It's what they call stuffed pizza.
It really is. I love it. I mean, there's one. There used to be one right up where I live. They actually moved to off Oakbrook Drive at the end of it near Pleasant Valley. So again, I'm ranking these, and I'm not trying to hate on it because I like them all for different reasons. Bourbon House, these are just good so places. Much. Yes. All right, so I'm down to Camparosa, Goodfellas, and Adriatico's. Man, the Bearcat from Adriatico's is so good, but it's going to come in number 3 on this list.
Fair.
It is really, really good. You like Adriatico's?
Yeah, it's good.
I do too.
But I would agree that it's not the top of this list for me. It's probably like third or fourth, but it's very good.
Goodfellas comes in at number 2. I mean, I love it's actually the greasiest of the pizzas probably that we're talking about, but it's outstanding. I love Goodfellas. And Camparosa is number 1 to me. I just ate there the other night, as a matter of fact. I've never had a bad meal at Camparosa. Never.
I had it recently too. Camparosa is like real, like I feel like that's more closer to what Italians eat potentially.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I say that never having had like actual pizza in Italy, but
and
when people describe it to me, that's what I envision.
And I say this because I do think it is outstanding pizza. I personally know the owners. I've known them for a long time. Our daughters played golf against each other throughout like junior golf and high school stuff. So I got to know them on the golf course. This is not what their business was. They were actually in the real business world and decided to start this pizza place. And I don't know if you saw the other day, I think it was in the state of Kentucky, right? Where it got the number 1 pizza in the state award. And
I believe that's right. Yeah.
Rightfully so. So again, I mean, it's probably different rankings from people because we're all kind of partial to the place that, but man, all these, I can't go wrong on any of them, to be honest with you. Dewey's is probably the one, wouldn't have to beg me to go, but it's just not one that comes to the forefront.
I like Dewey's, but I never get it. I would say like every time we go to Dewey's, I'm always like, oh, that was great, but I never think to go.
No, I'm the same way. Yeah, I'm the same way.
I would put Bourbon House probably down towards the bottom of my list, but again, I like it. It's just the one I would probably not ask to go there out of any of these places because it's too much in terms of the food. It's so filling.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Bourbon House, La Rosa's next. Again, I've never had Sorrento's, but I have Goodfellas at the top for me. I just think, to me, that's like, it's New York style pizza. It's actual New York style pizza.
Yeah.
It tastes like New York. It's really good.
It is really good. I will say this. The funny part about La Rose is we probably get it once a week for dinner because we're always out and somebody just brings it home. But usually it's a calzone or a hoagie before it's a pizza. As goofy as that sounds.
What do you get? The buddy or whatever it's called?
I get the steak hoagie.
Oh, okay.
Steak hoagie with a little pizza sauce on it. I know some other people do the mushroom sauce, but I go with the tomato sauce.
I'm a big hoagie guy.
I love hoagies. I do the baked buddy or the baked royal every once in a while.
You know who is it Riverfront? What's it? Riverfront Pizza?
There's a Riverfront Pizza.
Fantastic hoagie.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to check.
You ever had theirs?
No, I've seen the place. I just know.
Oh yeah. Go get a Riverfront Pizza hoagie and come back and talk.
All right.
Their buns,
all right. I'll do it.
Kill you.
I'll do it. I got challenged to eat one of those Diamond Star Crunch thingamajiggers and did it, so I'll do this.
Yo, this is better than the Star Crunch. I can guarantee that.
All right.
That's all we got.
All right, good stuff. Appreciate it. We'll be back next week as the Bengals get set for the opener. Will Jamar Chase player? Will he won't? We'll see how our betting picks did in week 1, and we'll dive into week 2 as well and much, much more. For Rick Roaring, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition presented by Blake, the Attorney Maislin.
Sure, you could stop watching now, but let's be honest, you want to see more. So click some of those links, or better yet, go ahead and tap subscribe. That way you'll catch more content from Local 12.